Right now on Morning News Now, Donald Trump on trial. Today, the former president expected to appear in a New York courtroom for day 2 of a civil fraud case involving his namesake company.
No matter how powerful you are, no matter how much money you think you may have, no one is above the law.
We'll take you to the courthouse to break down the charges against Mr. Trump, his sons, and the Trump Organization. Plus, Hunter Biden expected to enter a plea deal to federal felony gun charges today. We'll bring you the latest. Also this morning, more infighting on Capitol Hill as House Republican Matt Gaetz moves to oust Kevin McCarthy as Speaker. More on the challenge that's raising even more tension within the GOP. Plus, safe and sound, a joyous ending to a desperate search for a missing girl. This morning, 9-year-old Charlotte Senna is back home 2 days after police say she was kidnapped while on a family camping trip. And now her alleged kidnapper is in custody. What we know about her rescue, including the ransom note investigators used to help track her down. And a sober October. A new trend is challenging drinkers to put down their glasses and take a break from alcohol. What doctors want you to know about the physical and mental benefits of going alcohol-free. I heard a dry January, got a October version.
January can be challenging because you're trying to do all the other resolutions on top of not drinking.
Too many. Yeah,
so maybe move this one to October. Good to have you with us this morning. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. We're going to begin here in New York, where former President Trump is expected to be in court for the second day of his civil fraud trial.
The fate of his business dealings in the state of New York hangs in the balance. On the trial's opening day, Trump came face-to-face with New York Attorney General Letitia James. She is suing Trump along with his oldest sons, Don Jr. and Eric, their companies, and several executives. The $250 million civil lawsuit alleges that Trump and his sons exaggerated their business assets for years to get favorable loan terms from lenders. The Trumps and their company deny any wrongdoing. Trump spoke to reporters as he arrived in court yesterday, slamming the allegations with language he has used many times before.
It's a scam, it's a sham. Just so you know, my financial statements are phenomenal.
The Judge Engoron, who is overseeing the case, already ruled last week that Trump committed fraud. There is no jury for this trial, so now Engoron is considering 6 other allegations raised by James, including falsifying business records and insurance fraud. AG James says she believes justice will prevail.
Donald Trump and the other defendants have committed persistent and repeated fraud. My message is simple. No matter how powerful you are, no matter how much money you think you may have, no one is above the law.
NBC's Lindsay Reiser is outside the courthouse in Lower Manhattan, and NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalos is here to take a closer look at the case. So, Lindsay, let's start with you. Judge Engoron says he expects this trial is going to last well into December. So what were the major takeaways from day one?
Well, really, his entire business acumen is put into focus in this trial. Good morning to both of you, and good to be with you. The trial did move a little quicker yesterday than expected. We went through opening arguments, and our first witness jumped on the stand, will continue today. Now, inside, our producers tell us inside that courtroom, the former president appeared agitated at times. His arms were crossed. He was tapping his foot. As he went into lunch, he glared angrily at Attorney General James as she stared straight ahead. Then, in his remarks at lunch, the former president called for the judge actually to be disbarred, accusing him of election interference, even saying that some people say he should be criminally charged. At the heart of the opening arguments for both sides, the Attorney General's office is accusing the former president and his team of overinflating their assets to the tune of billions to get favorable loan terms, and that those values were determined by the former president himself. His defense team is arguing that valuations are subjective, also arguing that there was no intent to defraud, and saying that he didn't include his most valuable asset, his brand. Joe and Savannah?
Let's bring in Danny here on set with us and talk about what we have learned so far in opening statements. Trump's attorney said that the evidence demonstrates that there was no intent to defraud, and also that the loan transactions were, quote, successful and profitable. Is that enough? What do you make so far of what we know of the defense strategy?
We can break that up into 2 parts. The first part, the no intent to defraud, that is relevant. That is something we can expect the defense to put in evidence about. The second part, not so powerful. The idea that banks there was no harm, no foul because we actually paid back all our loans on time and nobody actually suffered any injuries. That misunderstands how finances work. And Trump knows this. This is a world that he lives in and knows very well. When you defraud a bank in order to get, for example, a favorable loan, if you give them false information, then you're exposing the bank to risk it isn't aware of. And that is the harm visited upon the bank. Yes, in fact, nothing bad happened because, as he says, maybe he paid the loans back. But you can imagine that that rationale would mean that you could lie to banks all the time to get favorable loan terms as long as you pay your money back on time. That's not how the business world works. That's not how finance works.
So, Lindsay, the prosecutor's first witness was Donald Bender. That's Trump's former accountant. What did we hear from his testimony, and do we know anything about Trump's reaction to that?
And he testified last year at the tax fraud trial against Trump Organization companies. He testified that he compiled the financial statements that the Attorney General's office says included inflated values using information provided by the former president and his team. Now, the president, according to our producers and reporters inside the courtroom, appeared beet red during some of this testimony, was whispering to his attorneys. But also the judge appeared to hand him a minor win at the end, essentially saying that some of this testimony did appear old, that it would have to be tailored to the statute of limitations at hand, which the president did decree as a victory once that court adjourned for the day.
Danny, we heard from the former president himself several times outside the courtroom yesterday. Put in context kind of how often we see something like that, the defendant themselves talking so much, and also what could that potentially mean if he were to take the stand? What would testimony kind of mean when we're hearing so much from him as it is?
Here's what you do sometimes see, and I've done this myself. After a verdict is entered, and whether it's good or bad for your client, sometimes the client or the attorney go to the courthouse steps. We've seen this in movies. And they vow to appeal, or they talk about the case. Prosecutors do this, too. That's not what Trump's doing. This is the middle of the trial. He's walking out into the hallway, it looks like. And I've been in that courthouse many times. I think I know where he is. He's not that far away from the courtroom. So he's going into the hallway, basically, and complaining about the judge yards away from where the judge is. And you wonder, if you're the judge, what do you do about that? Do you send court staff out there to shoo everybody away? You're not just shooing away some litigant. You're shooing away the former president and a Secret Service detail and an entire gaggle of reporters, press, photographers, everything. So maybe if Justice Engoron even knew about it, he probably just thought, let him go. But you don't do those kinds of things to a judge who is still deciding your fate, especially when this is a bench trial and there is no jury. The judge, who has already signaled how he feels about the defense, is going to be listening. Now, does that mean he'll be biased against Trump? Not necessarily, but it's never a good idea to annoy a judge.
Absolutely. Danny Savello's here on set with us. Lindsay Reiser just downtown from us outside the courthouse. Thank you so much both for kicking us off as day two unfolds.
This morning, President Biden's son, Hunter Biden, is expected to appear in federal court in Delaware. He'll be arraigned on 3 gun charges.
Hunter Biden is expected to plead not guilty to charges that he allegedly lied on a federal form to obtain a firearm. NBC News White House correspondent Mike Milley joins us now from outside that courtroom. That's in Wilmington, Delaware. Hey, Mike, good morning. So Biden's own lawyers fought to make it so that he would not have to appear in person today, but they were rejected. What can we expect from Hunter Biden's arraignment today?
Well, Savannah, this should be a routine proceeding, well, as routine as any court proceeding can be when it involves the son of the sitting president of the United States. And I should emphasize should be routine, because we remember what happened just about 10 weeks ago when I was standing outside this same courtroom, when we then expected a routine proceeding in which Hunter Biden would enter into that plea agreement that his attorneys had reached with federal prosecutors, not just on these gun-related charges, but also on tax charges. That deal, of course, unraveled under some probing questions from the judge overseeing this case, Mary Ellen Noriega, in which she questioned not just the terms of this agreement, but also how it was supposed to be implemented. So today's proceeding follows from that, the collapse of that agreement. And now we expect, as you say, Hunter Biden to plead not guilty to these charges. Now, Hunter Biden's attorneys point out that these specific charges that he's going to be pleading to today have never been brought before in this jurisdiction, the U.S. Attorney for Delaware. They've also faced constitutional challenges. The judge overseeing this case can, based on today's proceedings, either set a trial date or maybe order the parties to go back to the drawing board and try to reach a new plea agreement.
Mike, you talk about how unprecedented those charges are there. Remind us exactly what those charges are and the possible sentence realistically they could carry if convicted.
Sure. Now, we're familiar, of course, with the background checks that are required when you purchase a firearms. Those forms require an individual to certify that they are not under the influence of narcotics. This purchase occurred just about 5 years ago exactly at the peak of Hunter Biden's drug addiction. So 2 of the charges stem from him falsifying information, certifying that he was not when he, in fact, was under the influence of narcotics. The third has to do with the owning of the gun under those terms itself. It could carry a charge, a maximum charge, if all 3 charges were given the maximum sentence of 25 years in prison and $750,000 fine. Unlikely in this case, even if it were to go to trial and he were to be found guilty, because he is a first-time offender. Now, what we're also waiting for is what happens to those tax charges that Hunter Biden was also set to plead guilty to about 10 weeks ago. We're still waiting for the U.S. Attorney David Weiss to move on those charges.
All right, Mike Milley in Delaware. Mike, thank you so much.
Well, police in the nation's capital say a Texas congressman was the victim of a carjacking in D.C. last night. Democratic Congressman Henry Cuellar, according to a statement from his chief of staff. He was not injured when his car and luggage were stolen by 3 armed assailants. The incident took place around 9:30 on Monday, about a mile from the nation's capital in a neighborhood where dozens of lawmakers live. No arrests have been made at this time.
The clock is now ticking on a vote that could remove Kevin McCarthy as House Speaker. After teasing it over the weekend, Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz officially filed a motion to force a House vote on whether to boot McCarthy from the speakership.
I have enough Republicans where at this point next week, one of 2 things will happen. Kevin McCarthy won't be the Speaker of the House, or he'll be the Speaker of the House working at the pleasure of the Democrats. And I'm at peace with either result because the American people deserve to know who governs them.
Gaetz has long been opposed to McCarthy's leadership. He made this latest move after the Speaker worked with House Democrats to avert a government shutdown this past weekend.
While Gaetz admits McCarthy can probably survive a first vote to oust him, the Speaker will likely need to rely on Democrats to save his job. McCarthy has welcomed the challenge, simply saying, "Bring it on." NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Ali Vitale joins us on the latest. Hey, Ali, good morning. So where do we go from here? How much support does Matt Gaetz have in this push to oust the Speaker?
Well, look, we're actively trying to do that counting ourselves. And you know that as hard as we're trying, the Speaker's office and allies are trying even harder to understand just what he might have to do to keep his job. Because as many Republicans as he loses, over 4 or 5, depending on how many people are in the chamber, that's going to depend on how many Democrats he needs for support. And when we say support, that might not mean outright, yes, I vote to keep McCarthy. That might just mean voting present or not being in the chamber. This vote can happen at any point in the next 2 days. That's how long leadership has to actually buy themselves the time to sort of get their ducks in a row here. We don't know exactly when the vote is going to happen, but we know the outside parameters of what could govern it. So that's really what McCarthy is working within right now. The thing that I'm looking at as we sit here on Tuesday is whether or not there's any way that this vote could possibly stretch into Thursday. And the reason that I ask that is because that's the day that there are funeral proceedings and commemorations for the late Senator Dianne Feinstein of California. Many in the California delegation, many of whom are Democrats, would likely go home to attend those, and that could make an attendance issue on the Democratic side. That's just one of the things that I'm looking at. But if we're sitting here on Tuesday and he's only got 2 days, I'm not sure that the vote can stretch until Thursday. But again, it's a numbers game. It's not just how many Democrats does McCarthy need to get on board to offset the Republicans that he's going to lose. And right now I count 4 or 5. It's also a question of what's the total number in the chamber, because that changes the number that he's trying to count to keep his job.
And Ali, does Gaetz have anyone in mind to replace Speaker McCarthy?
Look, I asked this exact question yesterday because, as we've said a billion times and will probably say until we know a name, you cannot replace McCarthy with nobody. When I asked Gaetz this yesterday, he got kind of snippy about it, but then ultimately said that he wasn't going to offer any names. He himself was not running for Speaker, but he thought that there could be people out there. Now, the names that we often hear, people like Jim Jordan, he's an ally of Speaker McCarthy. He's also running the impeachment inquiry. I don't get the sense that he wants this job. Someone like Tom Emmer, who's currently the whip in McCarthy's leadership operation, has said that he doesn't want this job. Steve Scalise is the #2 Republican right now, maybe someone that we would have looked at, but the calculus has to, or maybe has changed because he's currently undergoing cancer treatment. That's something that Gates himself referenced yesterday, saying that Scalise could be someone, but because of his health right now, that's an open question.
So, and Gates said McCarthy's almost certainly going to need to rely on Democrats to keep his speakership. Do we have any idea what the Democrats are thinking here? What are they going to do?
Oh, man, this is the ultimate question. Aside from if not McCarthy, then who? Because I've talked to several moderate Democrats who may be open, but it's politics. You don't get something for nothing if you're McCarthy. And for Democrats, there would have to be concessions made with how the House is run, maybe certain pieces of legislation. I'm thinking, for example, about Ukraine funding. There are key things that there could be points of commonality on. McCarthy would have to concede those to Democrats in the same way that, frankly, he conceded to the hard line of his party to get this job in the first place back in January. Those conversations probably would have to happen. My understanding is they have not happened yet. And there are just as many Democrats, frankly, way more, the majority, who say this is a Republican problem. Let them figure it out. The chaos looks good for the Democrats politically.
Absolutely. Allie, before we let you go, I do quickly want to switch gears, talk about LaFonza Butler, set to be sworn into the Senate later today, taking the seat of the late Dianne Feinstein. What can we expect this afternoon?
Look, this is a swearing in that we expect to see later this afternoon, and it's the first moment that it could possibly happen because the Senate doesn't come back until today. Our understanding is that that swearing in will happen, and then you will now have a senator serving in the seat of the late Senator Dianne Feinstein. This week, though, will be shorter on the Senate side because of commemorations for Feinstein, as we mentioned. Those will happen on Thursday. But really, for Butler, I think the important thing to remember here is we will have an open question about whether or not she seeks the seat that she's currently having at Newsom's request. That's something that he said she was not banned or stopped from doing, but that's a very crowded primary field of California legislators who have already been in this race for months, who have been raising millions of dollars, and this is not going to be an inexpensive seat. I will say, as Butler is serving, she will now be the only Black woman serving in the Senate chamber. There hasn't been a Black woman serving there since then Senator Kamala Harris when she got elevated to VP.
Allie Vitale covering it all for us this morning. Thank you so much. Well, it is fall, but when you walk outside, it's probably still going to feel like summertime in parts of the country.
Meteorologist Michelle Grossman joins us with more on these warm October temperatures. Michelle, good morning.
Hey there, guys. Great to see you. And we are going to break records once again today. We broke records on Sunday. We broke more records yesterday. And we're going to do that once again today because temperatures are going to soar into the 80s and 90s once again. Unseasonably warm from the plains to the east. And then back behind the cold front, we're feeling very fall-like. So this is all going to move east over the next several days. But first, today, you need the short sleeves. You need the shorts because temperatures near 90 degrees in so many spots. Chicago today, 87 degrees. That's 20 degrees above normal for this time of year, near 90 also in St. Louis, Cincinnati. It's warm too in Minneapolis, 84 degrees. We're going to hit 90 degrees in Memphis. That's about 12 degrees above what they typically see this time of year. And warm too in the Northeast, Burlington, Vermont, 82, New York City, 81. That's well above average. And again, records will be broken. Tomorrow we'll keep that heat in place, but notice in Chicago, it's still above average, but cooler than it had been. So 15 degrees above average tomorrow, but in the low 80s, 85 in Indianapolis. Still really warm in parts of the Northeast. D.C., we're going to hit 84 degrees or nearby there, 84 in New York City, and Buffalo, 89 degrees. That's near 90 in Buffalo, New York in October. Temperatures are going to lower later on this week into the weekend. It's going to feel fall-like once again by Saturday and Sunday, but notice Minneapolis feeling fall-like even by Thursday into the mid-60s. Big temperature drop once again Friday and Saturday into the low 50s. Same story in Indianapolis. We're going to be into the upper 50s by Saturday, holding on to that warmth in Philadelphia on Thursday near 80, also on Friday, but a big drop off, 71 degrees on Saturday, and then into the 60s Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. Now, we have that cold front. That's sort of the dividing line between that fall-like air back to the west and that really warm air into the east that I just showed you. Along this front, we're going to see a lot of rain. It could be very heavy at times. That could lead to some flooding and also the chance for some strong to severe storms. So that's from Texas to Minnesota. Localized downpours are possible, and we could see the chance of some hail, some tornadoes, some really gusty winds. Tomorrow, we'll see that cold front move a little bit further to the east. It's going to get a little bit hung up in the south, and that's going to bring that severe weather threat into the south. And we could see some really heavy flooding tomorrow. That's going to lead to an area, pretty big area of flash flooding tomorrow. So I'll show you that in just a minute. But this is what it looks like in terms of the severe weather threat. Where you see that orange there, that includes Rapid City. That's the likeliest spot of seeing some tornadoes. Back to you guys.
All right, Michelle, thank you so much. Well, there's much more to come here on Morning News Now. Coming up with Knowing Their Net Worth. Forbes is out with its yearly ranking of richest Americans. Later this hour, we'll show you who's on top. Plus, the big name making history with his Forbes 400 debut.
Up first, though, panic in Paris ahead of the 2024 Olympics. We'll show you the efforts to eradicate a citywide bed bug infestation. Yikes. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Former President Trump's recent personal attacks are not just directed at those who are connected to his legal troubles. He recently went after General Mark Milley, who served as chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff during the Trump administration. NBC Nightly News anchor Lester Holt sat down one-on-one with the general just before his retirement to learn more about his relationship with the former president. Here's part of their conversation.
Much of General Mark Milley's military career was spent in harm's way, especially if you include the reported and rumored battles at the White House.
Your legacy and Donald Trump's legacy are intertwined. Have you accepted that?
Well, I mean, that's a fact. Look, I'm not the president, never was the president. I'm merely an advisor to a president, to two presidents, actually. And our paths crossed, and I think that, history will obviously connect the two of us together. Sure.
Yeah, some people would say you're downplaying the significance. I mean, you became a household name in many ways because of the reported clashes between you and the then president.
Yeah. Generals don't have clashes with presidents. I think some of that is overstated, frankly, about clashes, like raised voices and arguments and all that kind of stuff. I rendered to President Trump just like I rendered to President Biden. I give him various courses of action and options.
But Milley was often described as a guardrail against the former president's impulses and made this apparent parting swipe at the former president during his retirement remarks.
We don't take an oath to a wannabe dictator.
A few days before the election, you were making it known that the Army, the military, would play no role in determining the outcome of the
Sure.
election. Why did you feel the need to say that? Was that a specific concern that you had?
There was a lot of discussion in the open media about the U.S. military and what role we would play and so on. So I wanted to make sure it was clear to the American people, to our adversaries, to our friends and allies overseas, but also to our own force, to us wearing the uniform, that we have zero, and I mean zero, role in U.S. electoral politics.
And you assured the Chinese at one point, your Chinese counterpart, that essentially the U.S. was okay, the U.S. was stable. Is that a fair characterization?
Yeah, that's right. And Secretary Esper asked me to make a call, and we did that.
Last week, in a social media post, former President Trump attacked Milley for that call.
With regard to your talking to the Chinese, he said this is an act so egregious that in times gone by, the punishment would have been death. A war between China and the U.S. could have been the result of this treasonous act. That's from a former commander-in-chief to a sitting chairman of the Joint Chiefs. How do you respond to that?
Everyone's entitled to their opinion, and I've served my country faithfully for 4.5 consecutive decades in peace and war. And my family has made enormous sacrifices for this country, and my mother and father before me and grandparents before them. So I'll take a backseat to no one on loyalty to this country. And my loyalty is to the Constitution. It's to a document. It's never to an individual. And that's the loyalty of every single one of us in uniform.
During Milley's tenure, there was the chaotic Afghanistan withdrawal when 13 U.S. service members were killed in a terror attack, many of their families criticizing Milley for a lack of accountability.
Has anyone been held accountable to what went wrong with the Afghanistan withdrawal?
Well, if you mean has anyone been specifically punished in some way, no, but look at Lester. That war didn't end the way anybody wanted it to end. This is a 20-year war. There were decisions made over 20 years that landed us where we did.
And a warning from Milley about the threat from China following that spy balloon.
How would you characterize their espionage efforts? Or have they
Chinese espionage is quite good.
Have they infiltrated the Pentagon? Have they infiltrated the U.S. military?
Well, I can't imagine that they haven't tried anyway. I'm not going to go over details of what they've infiltrated, not infiltrated, but they are a very, very capable intelligence collection organization.
Our thanks to Lester Holt for that report.
Well, the city of Paris is itching to get to the bottom of an infestation of bed bugs. There are even reports of the blood-sucking insects in trains and movie theaters. Well, now city authorities are ramping up efforts to get a handle on the situation before next year's Summer Olympics. Here's NBC News foreign correspondent Raf Sanchez.
The city of Paris battling a widespread infestation of bed bugs.
Oui, on a peut-être même une quinzaine, parce qu'il y en a beaucoup des petites, des toutes petites.
Videos going viral on social media in recent weeks uncovering the less glamorous reality in the City of Lights. Bedbug sightings in trains and movie theaters across the city are becoming the new normal, leaving residents and visitors on edge. It really traumatized me, says this woman. I'm actually taking the train right now, and to be honest, I'm not serene. It's surprising, this man says. The fact we can actually see them means there are a lot of them, and they're being seen in the day when they usually come out at night, so that's a big problem. According to a report from France's National Agency for Food, Environment and Occupational Health, the upsurge in bedbug infestations in recent years has been caused by the rise in travel and the increasing resistance of bedbugs to insecticides. With the Paris Olympics less than a year away, authorities now ramping up efforts to get a handle on the situation. One member of Paris City Hall saying, I call on the Prime Minister, Elizabeth Borne, to organize a conference on the fight against the invasive species. And next week, the Transport Minister plans to meet with public transportation providers to brainstorm a plan of action for infested trains. Because right now, Paris is losing this battle to exterminate and eradicate the unwelcome pests. Raf Sanchez, NBC News.
Okay, more international headlines now. Joint military drills are raising tensions between the Philippines and China.
Claudio Lavanga joins us now from Rome with that and more. Hey, Claudio, good morning.
Good morning, guys. That's right. The U.S. Navy says the United States will be among several countries that will take place in that joint military exercises off the coast of the Philippines, raising tensions between Beijing and Manila over disputed territory in the South China Sea. Now, apart from the United States and the Philippines, Australia, Canada, Japan, the UK and Malaysia will also take part in the exercises, which will include drills on anti-submarine surface and air warfare. Frequent confrontations between the Chinese Coast Guard and Philippines vessels in the South China Sea are seen as a threat to the stability of the region. In other news, the World Health Organization recommended a second malaria vaccine in a further effort to curb the life-threatening disease. The vaccine, called R21 Matrix M, aims to prevent malaria in children at risk of the disease and comes 2 years after the first vaccine against malaria was introduced. The new vaccine is developed by Oxford University and will cost between $2 and $4. WHO said it will be down to individual countries to decide which of the two vaccines they use. And finally, let's head to Slovakia, where a traffic camera snapped a picture of a dog at the wheel of a car driving over the speed limit. Slovakian police said they couldn't believe their eyes when they saw the photo pop up on the police radar with no human in sight. But the owner said he was on the driving seat and that his dog suddenly jumped on his lap before the picture was taken. He was handed a fine, but fortunately, the human and the dog got out of that hairy situation without a scratch, something that, of course, the dog will have loved.
That is quite the image. My goodness. All right.
I love it. Oh, my God, Claudio, thank you so much.
Coming up, relief for the family of a 9-year-old girl who police say was kidnapped while on a camping trip. What we know about how she was found and the suspect now under arrest.
Plus, we're getting candid about anger, what you can do to stay in control even when you're mad in our weekly mental health check-in. This is Morning News Now. Welcome back. A missing girl in upstate New York is now back with her family after being found and in good health. And this morning, we're learning new information about the suspect and about how investigators were able to track him down. According to officials, early Monday morning, someone dropped off a ransom note at the home of Charlotte Senna's parents, and a fingerprint found on that note led investigators to a nearby residence where the suspect, 47-year-old Craig Ross Jr., was found. New York Governor Kathy Hochul describes what happened next.
They have what they call a dynamic entry, a tactical maneuver, and within the camper they located the suspect. After some resistance, the suspect was taken into custody, and immediately the little girl was found in a cupboard. She was rescued, and she knew she was being rescued. She knew that she was in safe hands.
Hochul went on to say investigators were still questioning Ross late last night, and while no charges had been filed yet, they were expected to come.
Senna had been missing since Saturday when she vanished while on a bike ride at Moreau Lake State Park outside Albany. Rescue teams have been searching for the 9-year-old around the clock in an area that's almost 50 square miles. For more, we're joined by former special agent in the FBI, Dr. Brianna Fox. Good to have you with us. Obviously, a huge relief that this young girl has been found. Still some questions this morning. We know there's a suspect in custody. Police are investigating. What do you think investigators are doing right now? What are they focusing on? And what do you think about those details about a ransom note?
Yeah.
Well, this is an incredibly interesting and miraculous case. The great news is that they were able to find Charlotte safe and sound and so quickly. But this came from great police work. They were immediately tipped off when they saw a mysterious vehicle dropping off a note at the parents' home. This is while there was police presence at the home. So the suspect immediately, police knew, was not very planning. This seemed very haphazard, dangerous. So after that, police were able to look at the note, found a fingerprint, and then through great policing, again, they were able to successfully identify where he was at and that Charlotte was safe.
And the FBI and U.S. Marshal Service were assisting in this investigation. What was their role throughout the search, and what happens now that she's been found?
Well, luckily, as I said, they were able to find Charlotte safe and sound there. But the next question is, why would someone do this? Was it purely financial? This was not a very well thought out ransom plan. So was this something that was planned in advance? Were there other people this could have happened to? I'm sure authorities are going through cases nationwide, looking to see if there are any similarities. And maybe if he either planned this out before or had actually enacted this before.
Well, good news, of course, that we all got yesterday. Dr. Brianna Fox, thank you so much for joining us on this.
Sunday marked the beginning of Mental Health Awareness Week, and we're using our mental health check-in to address some common ways people struggle with mental health. That includes how to handle anger.
Plus, if you missed Dry January, we are now in what's called Stoptober. We have tips on how to take a break from alcohol if you think it might be right for you. Let's bring in licensed marriage and family therapist Dr. George James, as always, for more on some of these mental health headlines. Dr. James, it's great to have you with us. Let's start with that anger one. It's an emotion we all, of course, experience at times, but sometimes it can sort of get the best of us. So tell us here kind of what happens to our brains when we experience anger, and if there's anything we can do to try to handle it better.
Once again, good morning. And yeah, sometimes when we get angry, as people say, you can see red, where you're unable to think. Sometimes when we're overwhelmed or stressed, it leads to places where our brain is just flooded, and it makes it really difficult. So some of the things that we need to do when we feel that way is to sometimes take a pause, to breathe, and then try to communicate, because anger is actually telling us something, that something is wrong. And if we can use that instead of acting out, it can actually be helpful. So take that moment and let people know what's going on.
We're just 3 days into October, which means a number of people are already giving up alcohol as part of Stoptober. How does cutting out alcohol affect your brain in the first few days and really in the whole month, the few weeks you're sober?
First, I think I need to be the person who coins these phrases. Stoptober just sounds really great. What happens is that the more that you kind of take a step away from alcohol, there's actually some changes that happens. One, your hydration levels start to get better, which means more energy and clearer skin, all the way to your sleep could improve, or your liver actually gets a break. People have even lost some weight when they've been able to stop drinking. There's so many changes that can happen, and overall, it can actually improve your mental ability in terms of concentration and focus. So there's a lot of good things that can happen. And even if you don't go all the way to zero, maybe reducing can also create some of these impacts.
Yeah.
You could call that yield-tober.
Yeah. Or I was going to say, that's damn January. What does it mean in October? I like it. There you go. All right. You mentioned how a benefit of that can be good sleep. I want to ask you about getting good sleep, because sometimes people experience what's called sleep anxiety. Walk us through what that looks like and if there's anything that can be done to relieve these symptoms.
Sometimes we don't realize how many people actually struggle with their sleep. Meaning sometimes it's hard for them to go to sleep, or if they wake up, hard to go back to sleep. And in that, they might start to worry about sleep. They might worry, what's going on with me? What's wrong with me? Why I'm not able to sleep? They might have a sense of dread. They might have, they start to sweat. They might even have other problems with their body and in their mind. And so some of the things is, one, to look to check out your medical doctor. Two, to really practice what's called sleep hygiene. Maybe not looking at those devices right before you go to sleep. Maybe practicing a routine to wind down and to be able to then go to sleep or find out what's going on. And so if you have some troubles there, it's really important that you check it out, because sleep is related to almost everything.
Anxiety comes up in just about everything, including relationships. So why is it people experience anxiety when they're dating, and how can it impact relationships we build with others? And does that go away?
Well, it's one of those things that we work on, and I hear it constantly with my clients and the people I work with in terms of like being worried about your relationship. Sometimes it could even create people from not being willing to commit or get into a relationship. It's worrying that maybe my partner is doing something, or maybe I'm not good enough. One of the things that anxiety can do is allow you to think about, hey, what do I need to do? And can I communicate with my partner? Am I sharing my thoughts and feelings? Because sometimes I'm not. It's just in my mind and I'm ruminating over it. So with sleep anxiety, it is real. You want to talk to your partner, but you don't want to build it so high that it stops you from enjoying the relationship you're in.
All right. Dr. George James, as always, a lot to cover. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
Good to see you. Coming up, he was once called the king of crypto. Well, now Sam Bankman-Fried is on trial for fraud. We'll break down the charges against him ahead of jury selection later today.
Plus, they are ranked the richest in the world. We're going to show you who made this year's Forbes 400 list, including some surprises. You're watching Morning News Now.
Welcome back. Jury selection is set to begin today here in New York in the trial of one-time crypto billionaire Sam Bankman-Fried.
He's accused of defrauding customers of his digital currency exchange FTX and defrauding lenders to his cryptocurrency hedge fund Alameda Research. Bankman-Fried has pleaded not guilty to the charges. He could face decades behind bars if convicted.
For more on what we can expect, we are joined by Tom Wright. He's the host and executive producer of the podcast Crypto Kingpins and the co-founder of production company Project Brazen. Tom, thanks very much for being with us this morning. So this trial is expected to last about 6 weeks or so. What are you going to be watching out for as this kicks off?
Well, white-collar crimes, sometimes they can be pretty boring when they're in court, but I'm really expecting fireworks in this one. I mean, the most interesting thing here is his former lover, Caroline Ellison, who played an integral part in the alleged fraud, is going to take the stand at some point, and people are really watching for that. The problem Sam is facing here is prosecutors allege that he stole $8 billion of customer money from his crypto exchange, FTX. And he used it for, lavish spending on real estate, for political donations to Democrats and Republicans, and also for a number of other expenditures. And the problem he's facing is that some of his inner circle turned against him and are helping the prosecution. And that includes Caroline Ellison, his former lover.
So on top of his inner circle, you have people outside of that circle, Tom. Your podcast, Crypto Kingpins, is focused on his rival, the founder of Binance, who you interviewed. How does their feud perhaps play into this case?
So Crypto Kingpins, our podcast, is about the feud between Sam and a guy called Changpeng Zhao, CZ. He's not very well known in America, although he is one of the richest people in the world. He's the founder of this rival exchange, Binance, which was founded 2 years before Sam's exchange. Sam saw him as a mentor of types, and CZ was one of the first investors in FTX back in 2019 when Sam set it up in Hong Kong. But then Sam got too big for his britches, basically, and tried to take on CZ and Binance and become the biggest crypto exchange in the world. And to do that, he started to badmouth Sam in US Congress, with media, and just with regulators as well, to try to become the most powerful crypto exchange. And that led to CZ sort of cutting ties with him, selling out his investment. And then about a year ago, November last year, CZ took the kill shot that brought Sam down, because he had a bunch of assets that he held. It's pretty complicated, but he was able to sell these assets. And that was what really led to the bankruptcy of FTX and all the unraveling that we've seen since then.
Tom, how's this going to affect the future of the crypto industry? I mean, could another person come along and do the types of things that Bankman-Fried is accused of?
Well, that's what's really interesting, because CZ himself is living in Dubai, and he is facing 13 charges from the SEC. He's not yet been criminally indicted in any way. So everyone's watching Binance very closely to see what will happen to that huge exchange. And actually, I think 10 or more times, many more times, more customers than FTX ever had. And so the question is, what's going to happen to Binance, and what's going to happen to some of the other, Coinbase and other exchanges that are still functioning. Crypto assets, after recent price declines, crypto assets are a lot less large than they used to be. They're only about 0.2% by one estimation of global financial assets. So it's not a systemic risk, but by other estimations, there are hundreds of millions of people who own crypto. So it's not going away. And what happens to CZ and Binance is real litmus test. Although people will also be watching the Sam's trial very closely as well, because don't forget, prosecutors and the Department of Justice face criticism after the global financial crisis for not cracking down on fraud, white-collar crime. And so they'll probably be looking to make this a test case to show that other crypto entrepreneurs can't just do what they like.
All right, Tom Wright, appreciate your expertise.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you so much.
Time for some financial headlines. Tesla is reintroducing an older version of its Model Y car.
CNBC's Silvana Henao joins us with that and other news. Hey, Silvana, good morning.
Hey, Savannah. Hey, Jill. Good morning to you. Yeah, so Tesla's bringing back the rear-wheel drive version of its top-selling Model Y crossover SUV here in the U.S. The latest version, which has a range of up to 260 miles, starts at just under $44,000. That's roughly $3,700 cheaper than the previous base model. The Model Y was launched in 2020, but the rear-wheel version was discontinued here in 2021, although it was still being sold in Europe and China. Meta is exploring a plan that could make users in Europe shell out as much as $14 a month for an ad-free version of Facebook or Instagram. The Wall Street Journal reports users could also agree to personalized ads for the free versions. Meta was fined by Irish regulators earlier this year for violating data privacy. The company has told EU authorities it hopes to roll out the ad-free plan in the coming months. And Paris Hilton is getting a special deal to post on X. That's the company formerly known as Twitter, has given the celeb a revenue sharing agreement. It includes a custom hashtag for the word Hilton, has been trying to make popular for years, sliving, or it's a combo of slaying and living. Hilton and X will also work on video content, including live shopping events that will let viewers browse and buy from a catalog of products. Sliving, I don't know, guys.
Yeah, it sounds like something your parents would tell you not to do. Like, no sliving this weekend.
Yeah,
we're
right?
gone.
Yeah.
Right.
You just made that bad. I don't know what that would mean then. Silvana Henao, thanks so much.
Crime, something, I don't know. All right. This morning, Forbes released its 42nd annual Forbes 400 list. It ranks America's richest people. This year, it shows the group's finances are bouncing back, regaining what was lost in 2022. The net worth for this year's group stands at a mere $4.5 trillion, tying with the record set back in 2021. Let's bring in Chase Peterson-Withern, who is the senior editor of Wealth at Forbes. Chase, good morning. Good to have you with us. So this is a club you now need to be worth $2.9 billion to get into the top 400. Walk us through the criteria that you consider when ranking the wealthiest people, and talk about the top three in particular.
Yeah, thanks for having me. So it is America's, sort of most elite club. There are more than 350 American billionaires who are too poor to make this list. So this is really sort of the 1% of the 1% of the 1%. And so Yeah, we look at everything that goes into a net worth, stocks and bonds and yachts and art and everything that we can find that a billionaire might own. And so yeah, it's a record year for America's richest people. The richest is still Elon Musk, who's worth $251 billion. And then he's followed by Jeff Bezos of Amazon, who's worth $161 billion. And then Larry Ellison of the software firm Oracle, who's worth $158 billion. So big numbers.
Wow. Honestly, numbers you can barely even wrap your head around. Chase, this year, former President Donald Trump did not make the cut. Tell us about him dropping from the list.
Yeah, so, Donald Trump has been on the list for most of the past 4 decades that we've been doing the list. He dropped off for a few years in the 90s when he was, going through some bankruptcies. But he's basically been on every year since. He fell off a couple years ago. He came back on last year, and the former president is again off the Forbes 400 list. We have his net worth at about $2.6 billion, which makes him $300 million short of making the cut for this list this year.
So, Chase, we saw Michael Jordan became the first athlete to join the list. Cool. Why is the basketball icon on the list? I mean, he's getting his hand in a little bit of everything these days, isn't he?
Yeah, exactly. So, he made about $90 million over the course of his playing career, which is a lot of money, but, not enough to put you anywhere near the Forbes list. But since then, he's made some pretty wise investments. And, the sort of most lucrative of them was buying a majority stake in the Charlotte Hornets NBA team. And he sold a majority stake in the team earlier this year to some private equity guys at a $3 billion valuation, which is 17 times more than the team was worth when he bought it and became the majority shareholder in 2010.
Whew. Well, so that was a good move, to say the least. Chase, when you just look at the list as a whole, what does it say sort of about the wealth of the country's richest Americans, who these people are? What's a takeaway here?
Yeah, definitely. So, it's a roadmap for who the wealthiest people are in the country and, therefore who some of the most powerful people are in the country. And you can really get a sense of what's going on in the economy and who's really benefiting from it from looking at this list. And so you'll see, the tech billionaires are up a lot this year. They were down a lot last year. And so you can sort of see a quantification, I guess, of sort of the big rebound in tech stocks and the AI frenzy and all of that. As one example, and you can see sort of older manufacturing fortunes starting to dwindle and things like that. So you can kind of see these seismic shifts and sort of analyze them through the lens of the biggest players in those industries.
All right. Always fascinating to take a look at the list. Chase Peterson Withorn, thanks so much for joining us this morning. We appreciate it. Coming up, high honors for a pair of pioneering scientists.
Up next, we'll introduce you to the newest recipients of the Nobel Prize and how their work led to the development of the COVID vaccine. This is Morning News Now.
Welcome back. Late night talk shows made a big return to TV last night after nearly 5 months away because of the Hollywood writers' strike. Jimmy Fallon, Stephen Colbert, and Jimmy Kimmel were all back on NBC's Tonight Show. Fallon had this message.
Seriously, I'm more excited than a guy seeing Beetlejuice with Lauren Boebert. I just want to say I'm so happy all the writers finally got their fair deal that they deserve.
As for Colbert, he joked, thanks to the picket lines, my writers got fresh air and sunshine, and they do not care for that. Only the way Stephen Colbert can say it. Good to have them.
Yeah, exactly. I know. And what a way to see right away what happens when the strike ends. You know what I mean? That these all come back. Thanks, Joe.
Yep.
Well, we end this hour with the scientists behind the discovery that led to a monumental medical breakthrough. But even they were surprised when they learned they're receiving one of the world's most prestigious awards. NBC News correspondent Andrea Mitchell has their story.
The Nobel Prize in Medicine, the last thing a pair of scientists expected when the phone rang.
My husband picked up and he was talking to somebody, and then he just handed over and said, "This is for you."
Did you believe it at first?
Not really, because, people can make jokes.
I also thought it was a prank or an anti-vax joke or something.
Especially surprising because their work had been ignored, even ridiculed for decades. They were working in different departments at the University of Pennsylvania when they discovered each other at the copying machine.
I have to say that working together, that was the real reward.
Born in Hungary, Kariko came to the U.S. in the 1980s. We first talked to her, Andrew Weissman, 2 years ago when the COVID vaccines were becoming more available. Talk to me about how skeptical people were about the value of RNA.
I
I don't know, did we listen to them? Not really, we...
I mean, everybody was skeptical, but we didn't care.
Together, they found a way to create a vaccine that got past the body's defenses, but still prompted the immune system to make antibodies to fight disease. Now their discovery is leading to new vaccines for AIDS and sickle cell anemia, even gene therapies to prevent some cancers. Her message to young people?
Just hang on and be resilient and have fun and enjoy.
Katie and I certainly didn't go into science for money or for awards. We did it because of interest and curiosity.
And the joy of saving millions of lives. Andrea Mitchell, NBC News, Washington.
Love their story so much and love that they're still being honored in the way they deserve after all those years. Also, I think they should give out the Nobel Prizes on April Fool's Day. Just
to really add to the, like...
fool around with people. Like, really? Are you sure about that?
How much do you love the detail of them just meeting at the copy machine and the impact they've made on the world?
It's amazing.
So
awesome.
cool.
All right. That's going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now.
But the news continues right now. Good morning, and thank you for joining us. I'm Savannah Sellers.
I'm Joe Fryer. Right now on Morning News Now, Hunter Biden is expected back in court this morning. He's set to enter his plea on a handful of felony gun charges. We've got the latest from the Biden's home state of Delaware in just a moment. Found alive, a welcome sigh of relief for the family of that missing 9-year-old girl in upstate New York. She has been located, and authorities say she is in good health. How authorities were able to track her down and her suspected abductor. Plus, back to work. Late Night makes its triumphant return to the airwaves in the wake of that Writers Guild deal, but not everything is back to normal, with the actors still on the picket lines. We're going to take you behind the scenes. And later in the hour, we are flipping the script with a viral lip-syncing comedian who rose to internet fame during the pandemic. We're going to catch up with Sarah Cooper, out with a new book about her life since achieving that viral success. She'll be here live. Looking forward to talking with her about that book, what's happened since then. A lot to discuss.
So much to discuss, and I'm sure people at home are excited to hear that because we all know about that from the pandemic times.
No kidding.
Yeah.
All right. We begin this hour with the arraignment of President Biden's son, Hunter Biden, which is scheduled to take place in Wilmington, Delaware later this morning.
Hunter Biden is expected to plead not guilty to 3 counts of felony gun charges at the hearing. NBC News White House correspondent Mike Milley is at the courthouse in Wilmington, and we're also joined by civil rights attorney and former prosecutor David Henderson. Thank you both for being here with us and kicking us off this hour. Mike, I'll start with you. Just on the ground, what are we expecting from this morning's hearing?
Well, Savannah, so much has changed from just 10 weeks ago when Hunter Biden came to this same courthouse intending to plead guilty to not just these gun-related charges, but also tax charges that had been brought. That's part of a plea agreement that his attorneys reached with federal prosecutors that the Bidens had hoped would lift the legal cloud that had been surrounding the son of the president. Now, of course, that deal has unraveled, and Hunter Biden today expected to plead not guilty to those charges. This is a process that now can go in one of 2 directions, at least one of 2 directions, I should say, given what happened here last time. The judge overseeing this case, Mary Ellen Noreika, she can decide to set a trial date, in which case we would see this unprecedented situation of the son of the president under trial, or they could send the parties here back to the drawing board and try to get back to some sort of plea agreement. And one reason, because of what Hunter Biden's attorneys are arguing, that these charges are unprecedented. They have not been brought in this jurisdiction. There are some constitutional challenges as well. And so what should just be a routine proceeding could be anything but.
So, David, we understand Hunter Biden's attorneys have suggested they could cite a recent Supreme Court ruling known as the Bruin decision as part of their defense. What is that? How could it come into play here?
Absolutely, Joe. And I'll say they're hoping they can cite that to get out of this. And what it all comes down to is last year in a case called New York Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin, the Supreme Court rewrote the rules for gun control laws. And it all comes down to this basic idea. If there wasn't a law like it back when the Second Amendment was passed, then you can't write a law like it now. And so a number of different laws have been challenged, including, for example, Oklahoma has a law that says if you use marijuana, then you can't own a firearm. Hunter Biden is being charged with being in illegal possession of a firearm as a result of lying on applications to obtain a gun. Here's a problem they're going to face, and I call it the mom test. If you couldn't convince your mom, you're probably not going to convince a judge or a jury. Imagine your mom says, your teacher said you lied. Is that true? Yes, but I only lied to get something that I have every right to possess, you're still going to be in trouble for the lying. So even if they overcome it based on Bruen, it's not going to get him completely out of this case.
Good way to put it. Mike, as we know, I mean, and as you kind of just touched on, this is just one in a series of legal battles facing Hunter Biden, and so many people, you know, like you said, watch that deal unravel. Now we're at this point. A lot of it's sort of murky. Walk us through the other legal issues that the president's son could face.
Well, the biggest question is what happens to those other charges that Hunter was prepared to plead guilty to here in July, those tax charges. Now, remember, David Weiss, who is the U.S. Attorney for Delaware, now has that special counsel authority given to him by the Attorney General Merrick Garland. So we expect another case to be brought, potentially in another jurisdiction, California or elsewhere, on those tax charges, waiting for that to happen. Now, of course, there's also the question of whether some new charges would be introduced involving whether he should have registered Hunter Biden as a foreign agent, a registered agent, as it's known. And then, of course, we have that impeachment inquiry that we saw kick off in the House of Representatives about not just Hunter Biden, but, of course, his father as well. That is also going to see some action today as Republicans are going to be interviewing the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia to ask why he didn't cooperate with David Weiss, the U.S. Attorney here, in bringing those tax charges. All of this with, not that anyone's counting, 399 days until the presidential election. And you have the son of the sitting president and, of course, President Biden's likely opponent, Donald Trump, both the headlines around their legal woes.
So, David, where do you, in your expertise, see the case going from here? Could we see that plea deal that unraveled come back together? Could we see more charges beyond the gun charges? What's likely to happen moving forward here?
Joe, any of the above. But to make a long story short, this case is confusing because people are thinking, wait, didn't he already enter into a plea agreement? He did. It fell apart for one basic reason. His lawyers wanted to say, look, we want this done from now until forever. No more gun charges, no more tax charges. And the judge said, look, you know they can't promise you that. He could commit another infraction in the future, and so he'd be prosecuted for it. I think that they should be able to reach an agreement on that basis. In the meantime, it will proceed as though it's going to trial like any other case. And ultimately, I think the most you're going to see is some form of probation for Hunter Biden. It's only a question of exactly how that will come about.
Mike, obviously, as you've both laid out for us, there are a lot of unknowns here. But given that today is the arraignment, any sense of when a trial could begin?
Well, we could see that in a matter of weeks. These things are always sort of moving timetables subject to the judge's discretion here. Remember, one of the other unusual parts of this plea agreement that had initially been reached was something known as a diversion program. This was something that the judge in the case questioned whether she had the authority to oversee. Both parties had asked her to play a role here. And so I think you're going to see a real spotlight here on the judge in this case, Mary Ellen Noriega, because it was her probing questioning that led to that plea agreement unraveling here. And she knows that the political backdrop here could also play into what you're asking about, which is the timing of a potential trial.
Absolutely. All right. Mike Milley, David Henderson, thank you both so much for getting us started this hour.
The $250 million civil fraud trial against former President Trump, his sons, and his company is set to get back underway in a lower Manhattan courthouse this morning, and Trump is expected to be there in person for a second day. NBC News senior legal correspondent Laura Jarrett has the latest.
Hey guys, good morning. The country had a rare peek into that courtroom as opening statements began in the trial, and the former president sat there stone-faced, listening to the attorney generals argue year after year he inflated his net worth. Mr. Trump's own words, documents, even his signature, now pieces of evidence.
With the future of his namesake company on the line, Donald Trump is preparing once again to appear in a Manhattan courtroom where he spent hours on Monday listening as the state's attorney general accused him of a long-running scheme to inflate his assets for financial gain.
No matter how powerful you are, no matter how much money you think you may have, no one is above the law.
The state beginning to lay out its evidence, scrolling through a PowerPoint of facts to be introduced in this months-long trial, and deposition clips from Mr. Trump, his longtime chief financial officer, and his sons, who've all denied they and the company did anything wrong.
I don't think I've ever had any involvement in the statement of financial condition.
While just steps from the courtroom, Mr. Trump fought back against allegations of fraud and lies, treating the first day of his civil fraud trial almost as a campaign stop.
Every time they give me a fake indictment, I go up in the polls.
The Republican frontrunner hurling attacks at the judge, who already found him liable and will determine the penalty he faces.
This judge should be disbarred.
And the attorney general.
This trial could have been brought years ago, but they waited till I was right in the middle of my campaign.
Mr. Trump blasting the suit, which accuses the Trump Organization and its executives of doctoring the company's financial statements for better loan terms, as a case with no real victim.
Banks got paid a fortune. Loan money got paid money back.
As his team blasted out fundraising appeals.
As for what happens next, there will be more witness testimony today, although Mr. Trump himself is not expected to take the stand for several more weeks, as this trial is expected to wind down in December. Back to you.
All right, Laura, thank you.
Well, House Speaker Kevin McCarthy is fighting to keep his leadership role this morning. This is after Florida Congressman and fellow Republican Matt Gaetz filed a motion to remove McCarthy from speakership. The House now has until Wednesday to vote on whether to keep him on as Speaker. NBC News senior Capitol Hill correspondent Garrett Haake has the latest from Washington.
Yeah, we witnessed something last night that hasn't happened in more than a century. A member of the House formally demanding a vote to remove the Speaker from power. It's just the latest dramatic escalation of a GOP civil war that could end with the most powerful elected Republican in the country out of his job. Overnight, a bitter Republican rivalry rising from the House floor to the history books.
Resolved that the office of Speaker of the House of Representatives is hereby declared to be vacant.
With a few simple sentences, Florida Republican Matt Gaetz forcing a vote in the next 48 hours on whether House Speaker Kevin McCarthy will remain in power.
Kevin McCarthy likes to pretend that he makes coalition with conservatives, but all he really does is break his word with conservatives.
Gaetz accusing the Speaker of breaking his promises to Republicans by working with Democrats to delay a government shutdown this weekend, and of making a secret side deal on Ukraine funding, which he opposes. McCarthy on Monday denying any such deal exists and urging Gaetz and his allies not to act against him.
I do not think it's good for the House. I do not think it's good for this institution. I do not think this is good for the country.
Afterwards, McCarthy projecting confidence on social media, posting simply, "Bring it on." And while the vast majority of House Republicans say they support McCarthy,
I am supporting Kevin McCarthy, as I have throughout, and will continue to do so.
The House's narrow margins, which contributed to the historic 15 votes it took to elect McCarthy Speaker,
that was easy, huh?
Also mean Democrats will have a significant voice in whether McCarthy maintains his gavel. Democratic leaders saying they've made no decisions yet on how they'll vote.
This is a lose-lose proposition, and Democrats are going to remain firm that we are here to do the work the people sent us here to do.
What happens next? Well, one challenge for Gaetz and his allies is, if not McCarthy, who? There is no clear backup candidate who could get the votes necessary to become the next Speaker if McCarthy is voted out. And the House has to schedule that vote in the next 48 hours.
And just this morning, he told our CNBC that he expects to survive. Garrett Haake, thank you so much.
9-year-old Charlotte Senna has been reunited with her family after she went missing over the weekend in upstate New York. Officials say they have the suspect in custody thanks to a major clue left behind on the ransom note. NBC News correspondent Kathy Park has the latest details.
Hey guys, good morning. The massive search for Charlotte Senna lasted 2 days. At one point, 400 people were here at this park looking for the young girl. This morning, she is safe and with her family. And even though the suspect is currently in custody, officials say the investigation is far from over.
This morning, 9-year-old Charlotte Senna is back with her family after vanishing from a weekend camping trip in upstate New York.
We're overcome with relief and gratitude for this gift to all of us.
Authorities managed to track down and arrest 47-year-old Craig Nelson Ross Jr. after they recovered a ransom note that had been dropped off at Charlotte's family home early Monday morning.
He literally drove up to the family's mailbox, assuming they were not home, leaving a critical piece of evidence behind, his own fingerprint.
Police entering that fingerprint into their database, discovering a match for a DWI in 1999 in the city of Saratoga. According to police, investigators searched multiple residences before closing in.
They found a double-wide house with a woman, the suspect's mother. The suspect lived in the camper behind. They have what they call a dynamic entry.
Around 6:32 p.m., police had the suspect in custody and immediately located Charlotte in the camper, physically unharmed, inside a cupboard.
She knew she was being rescued. She knew that she was in safe hands.
What were some of the biggest takeaways from this search?
Things can happen
in an instant. You know, Charlotte was no more than probably 0.2 of a mile from where she was camping.
The massive search for Charlotte lasting 2 days, involving more than 400 personnel. Charlotte's family reported her missing Saturday evening when she never returned to their campsite from a bike ride.
We got a miracle.
The news of Charlotte's safe homecoming turned a planned vigil Monday night into prayers answered.
If you can say something to Charlotte right now, would you Oh, honey, welcome home.
The suspect, Craig Nelson Ross Jr., was arraigned overnight. He's facing a kidnapping charge. He's currently being held without bail at the Saratoga County Jail. His next court appearance set for October 17th. Back to you.
All right, Kathy Park, thank you so much. We're back with a look at how the record number of migrant crossings into America is pushing resources to the limit in U.S. cities. Now, hospitals are sounding the alarm, saying they're overwhelmed. NBC News Homeland Security correspondent Julia Ainsley reports.
We recently spent the day inside Bellevue Hospital. That's the country's oldest and New York's busiest hospital. And they right now are the epicenter of the migrant surge, as the hospital there is now seeing over 1/4 of its patients who were recently arrived migrants to New York City. As you know, about 118,000 migrants have arrived in New York since spring of 2022, often straining the resources of New York. But at Bellevue Hospital, people who we talk to, whether they be clinicians, doctors, or people providing legal services, said it's really hard work. They're strained. People are on wait list, but they think it's a job worth doing. Here's what we learned.
The border crisis surging. Officials telling NBC News there were over 200,000 illegal crossings at the southern border last month, and a record 3 million migrants crossed the border in the last year. Now, a new warning 1,000 miles away in New York City, where officials tell us resources are overwhelmed. Across public hospitals in New York City, 1/4 of the patients are now migrants. Over the last year, nearly 30,000 visits by migrants and 300 new babies born to migrant moms. Staff here at Bellevue Hospital tell us they're eager to help, but the numbers are tough.
This has been the hardest work that I've ever done, but it's been the most impactful work that I've ever done.
And most of the visits to the taxpayer-funded legal clinic here are by migrants.
Our clinics are full, and there are waiting lists, and people are turning people away or referring them to other places.
Randy Redkin from New York's Legal Assistance Group says so many migrants are asking for legal help on asylum representation and health care access. Now, she says, American citizens who need legal assistance with issues like eviction and insurance have to wait up to 10 weeks.
If you ask me, do we need more resources for legal services, I would say absolutely yes.
Meanwhile, New York's governor now slamming the situation at the border.
It is too open right now. People coming from all over the world are finding their way through, simply saying they need asylum.
And New York Mayor Eric Adams saying providing services for migrants will cost city taxpayers $12 billion. But Biden administration officials have blamed Adams' response. It is not an operationally sound effort, one senior DHS official told NBC News. Meanwhile, migrants on the streets are desperate for city help. We met Orlando, who fled violence in Venezuela. He didn't want to appear on camera, telling us he slept on the street before coming to Bellevue for cancer treatment.
How is that for you, given your medical condition, to be sleeping on the street?
You have to make believe it's a good bed, a king size, and you lie down wherever and go to sleep, he says. Orlando tells us he came to New York because he heard about the social services the city would offer to migrants like himself, who were trying to start a new life.
And now New York Governor Hochul is announcing 18,000 jobs are available throughout New York State to migrants who are now eligible to work. As you know, the Biden administration recently granted nearly 500,000 Venezuelans the opportunity to apply for temporary legal status and give them temporary work authorization. So the governor now saying this could be an answer to get more migrants out of the city and the state's systems and being able to support themselves independently.
All right, Julia Ainsley, thank you.
Let's get you international headlines now, starting with a historic first. The UN Security Council has approved plans to help Haiti and its growing gang problems.
NBC's Claudio Lavanga joins us now from Rome with that and other world headlines. Claudio, good morning.
Good morning, guys. That's right. On Monday, the United Nations Security Council approved the immediate deployment of a multinational armed force to Haiti to combat violent gangs. Haiti's prime minister has now requested the deployment of an armed force for over a year as local authorities have been struggling to fight gang violence. There are only 10,000 active police officers in a country of more than 11 million people, and the hope is that the UN force will help restore peace and security. Now let's go to Bangladesh, where more than 1,000 people have died so far in the country's worst ever dengue outbreak. The Directorate of Health Services in Bangladesh say that more than 100 children are among those who died from the mosquito-borne disease and that over 200,000 people have been infected so far. Experts believe the dengue outbreak this year has been made worse by rising temperatures and climate change, which also caused longer monsoon seasons. And let's come back here to Rome and head to nearby Vatican, where Pope Francis suggested there could be ways to bless same-sex unions. The Pope was responding to a series of questions posed by conservative cardinals ahead of the Synod, an important meeting of bishops from around the world, which starts here next week. This week, the cardinals challenged the Pope to clarify the Church's position on LGBTQ+ Catholics, and he answered that blessings could be studied if they are not confused with sacramental marriage, which, according to the Church, is a union only between a man and a woman. Back to you guys.
All right, Claudio, thank you so much.
Let's check in with meteorologist Michelle Grossman.
Yes, she joins us with our forecast. Hey, Michelle, good morning.
Hi there, guys, and it's another warm one for so many of us. We broke records on Sunday, Monday. Going to break a lot of records once again today. Temperatures soaring into the 80s and 90s, feeling very summer-like out there. We have a cold front back to the west. Back behind that cold front, it's chilly. We're feeling very fall-like. We also have some wet weather in the Intermountain West, Pacific Northwest. Could see some strong storms along this cold front from Minnesota all the way to Texas, and could see the chance for some tornadoes and some really large hail. But the big story is the record warmth. We're looking at a lot of places that could see record-breaking temperatures. It just continues that summer, a record-breaking summer. Where you see these red dots here, those places are likely to break some records, and those aren't the only ones. So just today, also tomorrow, could see some record-breaking temperatures, and then we're going to cool it off back to fall-like temperatures as we head towards the weekend, back into the 60s in the Northeast by Sunday. But for today, we're near 90 degrees in St. Louis, Chicago. Chicago, you're going to be 20 degrees above what is normal for this time of year, into the mid-80s in Minneapolis, Omaha. Warm, too, in New York City, 81 degrees. That's 12 degrees above average. We're going to hit 90 degrees in Memphis. That's well above normal, too, there. And then as we go throughout tomorrow, we're looking at temperatures into the 80s once again, near 90 degrees in Buffalo, 26 degrees above normal for this time of year, 85 in Indianapolis. Charleston, West Virginia, looking at 84 degrees. Nashville, you're warm, too, into the upper 80s. Now, temperatures begin to lower. That's because that cold front that I just showed you will move to the east. It's going to bring a break to these temperatures. So fall-like by Friday and Saturday in Minneapolis, only in the low 50s. That's a big difference from the 80s they're seeing. Milwaukee, same story. You're going to be into the mid-50s. And Philadelphia, you're warm still on Thursday and Friday. Temperatures in the upper 70s, and then down to 71 on Saturday, into the 60s by Sunday. So the temperatures, that's a big story today, but also talking about the chance for some severe storms. So you want to be severe weather ready later on this afternoon if you live anywhere in the plains, from portions of Minnesota into portions of Texas. We're looking at the chance for some really heavy rain. Could see some flooding rains. The chance for damaging winds, also some hail. Could see a few tornadoes as well. Localized downpours are possible. Same story tomorrow. We'll see this threat kind of move off to the south, where you can see some really heavy rainfalls expected. That's where you see those brighter colors, the reds, the oranges, the yellows, and that could lead to some flash flooding there tomorrow as well. This is a bullseye for where we're expecting those severe storms. Where you see the yellow, that is likely. The likeliest spot, though, would be the orange. That includes Dodge City. Really large hail, baseball-sized hail, winds gusting up to 60 miles per hour, and a few tornadoes are likely. The best place to see these the large hails in the Hatched area, so Colby to Dodge City, Woodward, also Shamrock. That's going to be a story as we go throughout the afternoon and evening hours once we sort of see that daytime heating going. And then Wednesday, we still have another severe weather threat. That includes portions of Oklahoma into Texas, a little smidge of New Mexico, too. Wichita Falls, Sweetwater could see some strong to severe storms. Lubbock also. Another day with really large hail and also winds gusting up to 60 miles per hour. And there's a chance for that flash flooding where you see that dark blue there. Back to you guys.
All right, Michelle, thank you so much.
Thank you. Coming up, late night is back, but with the actors still on strike, not everything is back to normal.
We'll take you behind the scenes and find out what has changed as we hear from those late night hosts next on Morning News Now. with their first news shows in nearly 5 months. This comes as negotiators from the Screen Actors Guild and Hollywood Studios met for the first time since the actors went on strike in July. NBC News entertainment correspondent Chloe Molas is here this morning with all the latest. Chloe, good morning.
Good morning, Joe. That's right. This morning, scripted shows have reassembled their writers' rooms and begun to crank out new episodes of your favorite shows. Now, the hope is to begin shooting as soon as the actors' strike can be resolved. But after being the first to shut down when the Writers Guild went on strike, the late night shows, they're back, and their hosts have a lot to say.
5 months off, and we are back.
Late night is back after the months-long writers' strike.
My writers got fresh air and sunshine, and they do not care for that.
The hosts bring the jokes.
My dad called me up and said, finally, I can watch Kimmel again.
It's been going on so long, I just don't know if I'll be back.
You'll be back.
Catching up on what they missed.
And we have so much news to cover, but I'm going to sum it up all in just 2 words. Taylor Swift. Good night, everybody.
But sharing some heartfelt messages, too.
I never take this show for granted, but being away from it for as long as I've been away from it really hits home.
Actors won't be promoting their films or shows during the strike, but are allowed to talk about side projects, like Matthew McConaughey promoting his new book on The Tonight Show.
Welcome back. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
While on the picket line, a sense of optimism that the end could be in sight as SAG-AFTRA negotiators met with the AMPTP for the first time in more than 80 days.
And I think the studios finally realized that, they got to stop playing games.
While the agreement the Writers Guild reached last week with the AMPTP may be a sign of progress, striking actors say that they are prepared to stay out on the picket lines until their demands are met.
We have to stick together, and we cannot just take whatever they feel like they're giving us.
Meanwhile, with broadcast and cable shows months behind their regular schedule, the race is on to get scripts ready for production. Writers' rooms have already reassembled on shows like The Simpsons, with teams on Abbott Elementary and Law & Order reportedly starting back up next week. An uncertain moment in the industry, with billions of dollars hanging in the balance. So the AMPTP that represents the studios and streamers, that has Netflix, Warner Brothers Discovery, including NBC Universal's parent company, Comcast, too.
So I understand SAG-AFTRA is not commenting on the negotiations right now, but are we hearing from the Writers Guild about all this?
So, yes. Well, technically, they said last night that we had our first day of negotiations. We're not meeting today, but we're going to meet tomorrow. So interesting that they're pausing for a day where negotiations intense, that everybody needs like a breather today. The Writers Guild put out a statement saying that they stand in solidarity with SAG. Over 100,000 actors are in that union. But they said, hold on a second. Take as much time as you need. I mean, I'm being a little bit more casual than what their statement said, but they're like, don't feel pressure that we did our agreement. You guys need to stand for what you stand for and take all the time that you all need, that you shouldn't use our contract as a framework. And I think that it's really interesting. They're standing in solidarity, but obviously they overlap on some issues like artificial intelligence, but they are separate guilds with separate agendas here.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. They got a lot to hash out. All right, Chloe, thank you so much.
Thanks, Chloe. Good to see you.
Coming up, the explosion of those viral deepfake videos, which now have some celebrities sounding off.
That's right, and some are even taking legal action against the creators. But do they have a case? We're going to take a look after this. Welcome back. Well, October is National Bullying Prevention Month, and Monica Lewinsky is working to put a spotlight on what's called self-bullying. That's the negative self-talk we tell ourselves. She teamed up with the ad agency Mischief at No Fixed Address to produce PSAs to address this issue. Lewinsky spoke about the venture earlier this morning on Today's Show. Here's part of that conversation.
What made you want to address this kind of bullying? And frankly, that is what it is.
It is. It is. Self-bullying is bullying. This year's campaign was actually really personal for me. So I had an experience about 10 years ago or so where I had taken these course seminar things and anonymously, and they had us do an exercise where they put us into these groups of 3, told us to sit down and write out all the things that our negative voice says to us. So that was very easy for me, page after page after page. But the real kicker of it was that they then made us read our list out loud to the other people in the group. And in the course of hearing myself say these things out loud, I realized in a whole other way how cruel I am to myself, or was being, and that I would never say those things to someone else. So,
and that's the genesis of this PSA.
Yes.
It's so powerful because not only are they saying out loud the terrible things they say to themselves, they're directing it at another person. And these were not actors, and they were not following a script.
Yeah, no, this was unscripted, and they came
So what
in,
did you tell people? Yeah.
Yeah, so it was, what we ended up doing was we had, it was kind of very similar to the exercise that I had gone through. And so in terms of having people send us the night before their list of terrible things, they had no idea they were going to have to read them on camera. They were asked to bring a loved one who might be willing to go on camera as well. And so then we asked them to read their list on camera to a loved one. And they were so brave. And really what was amazing is not one person said, oh, I'm out of here. You know, everybody participated. So I think it's such a universal topic when you really stop to think about it.
It really is, because I think every single person watching has some version of this inside their own head. I certainly do.
Me too. In the makeup chair this morning, you know.
Every single day. And so, but it's hard because it's so automatic. To me, it feels like it's almost like breathing. This constant narrative. So how do you get control of those kinds of thoughts?
Well, it is. I mean, exactly as you say. I think for me, and what I found is, you know, first of all, we have to recognize the likelihood we're going to eradicate the negative voice in our head is not very high. But it really, you can curb it. I have worked on this for a very long time, and my therapist works on it with me a lot. And I have found that, you know, really it's sort of about catching yourself and course correcting. And whether that course correcting is to something positive, and if you can't do that, then try going neutral.
How powerful is that? A special thanks to Savannah Guthrie and Today's Show for that conversation. Let's get you some financial headlines now. TikTok might be exploring new ways to make the app more profitable.
CNBC's Savannah Henao joins us with that and other money news. Savannah, good morning.
Good morning, Joe. Good morning, Savannah. Yeah, so TikTok is reportedly testing an ad-free subscription version of the app. Screenshots show TikTok prompting users to choose between staying on the free version or upgrading to the ad-free experience, which may cost $4.99 a month. A TikTok spokesperson confirming the test to Variety, but says it's only being conducted in one country outside the U.S. TikTok has been trying to generate new revenue, pushing ads and coupons and launching a shopping tab. Apple is ending support for the original models of its watch. That includes the ultra-expensive editions, such as the $17,000 18-karat gold Apple Watch. It was seen on the wrist of influential celebrities like Beyonce and was never available to the public. Apple says the original watches are now obsolete, meaning it will no longer provide software updates or offer parts, repairs, or replacement service. Fast food drive-through lanes are getting even faster. A new study by a research firm InTouch Insight shows the average time customers spent in a drive-through lane fell by nearly 30 seconds this year. Taco Bell, KFC, and Carl's Jr. had the fastest overall times, but across the board, drive-through demand has dropped since the pandemic began in 2020, as many diners are shifting to ordering online and using self-service kiosks inside restaurants.
I still can't get over the fact that people order fast food for delivery. It feels like so
I
expensive.
thought I was the only one, because I was like, wait, what? Fast food for delivery?
I've
really?
done it.
You've done it. All right. Well,
Totally
people do it. But
neither of you have done that. You promise?
I promise.
Yeah,
I've never done it.
I really don't think I have. So.
I don't know if I believe you. Savannah Henao, thank you so much.
You got it.
Some celebrities are sounding off about AI technology, saying it's being used to recreate their likeness without their consent. And that's leading to scams. For some, it carries an emotional toll. NBC News correspondent Jacob Soboroff takes a closer look.
Hey, yeah, this is not the first time that we have talked about deepfakes, but they are better than ever and easier to make than ever before. Now some celebrities are speaking out, and they're saying they're not just creating real-world problems, they're creating emotional ones as well.
Today we are launching an investment project.
From Elon Musk pitching an investment opportunity to Gayle King promoting a weight loss product.
Follow the link right now and learn more about my secret.
It seems fake ads made with AI are everywhere. Even Tom Hanks has found himself an unwilling spokesperson, warning his Instagram followers, "There's a video out there promoting some dental plan with an AI version of me. I have nothing to do with it." While celebrity endorsement scams are nothing new, in the age of AI, these deceitful deepfakes are becoming more convincing, fooling those who buy into them. The FBI says last year victims lost a record $10.2 billion to scams and other online crimes. Even if deepfakes aren't scams, some say they can take an emotional toll. AI-generated videos of late comedian Robin Williams have been viewed by thousands. Over the weekend, his daughter Zelda speaking out, writing, "I've already heard AI used to get my dad's voice to say whatever people want. I find it personally disturbing." And now celebrities are fighting back.
It feels great to be back in front of a crowd. But
after a computer created this fake Tom Brady comedy special, the football legend sent the people behind the hour-long video a cease and desist letter, reportedly calling the video highly offensive and saying it presented Brady in a false light. The creators later removed the video but defended their actions.
I don't think we're in any way presenting Mr. Brady at all. It's simply a parody of the idea of Tom Brady doing stand-up.
The music industry is looking to mute the use of AI, too.
Talking to a diva, yeah, she on my nerves.
After this computer-generated Drake song became a viral hit, the Grammy-winning rapper and his record label slammed the use of AI to create fake songs. But it hasn't stopped AI music producers from cloning the voices of Rihanna, Beyonce, and Taylor Swift.
Yeah, it's a party in the USA.
This is serious breaking news.
In 2021, I sat down with Miles Fisher, one of the men behind deepfake Tom Cruise.
I'm a big Dave Matthews guy.
A TikTok account that went viral for posting these wild videos that appeared to be the actor.
I think the technology is morally neutral. As it develops, the positive output will so far outweigh the negative, nefarious uses.
But while these fakes were made to be funny, 2 years later, many aren't laughing, as the use of AI has exploded and become increasingly more difficult to manage.
When it comes to legal action, Tom Brady seems to be leading the way with that cease and desist letter, although it might be easier said than done when it comes to getting those videos down as far as deepfake scams are concerned. When we were reporting this story, tried to track down some of the companies behind the scams, and we had a very hard time. Although you at home, if you suspect that there's a deepfake scam online, you can report it to the Better Business Bureau through their scam tracker and take action yourself. Back to you.
All right, Jacob, thank you.
And Sinead Bovell, a futurist and founder of tech education company Way, joins us now. Sinead, thanks for being here. So, I mean, we just heard so many different implications, so much sort of havoc that this could potentially reach. But what sort of trouble could using AI for these deep fake scams get someone into? Like some of those cease and desist and things like that we heard. What can actually happen here?
Right. So in many ways, fraud, extortion, reputation damage, copyright infringement, that is largely a part of our current legal framework. So there's not necessarily anything that's new there. What AI does is it makes the accessibility of these types of scams, the sophistication of these scams, a lot more prevalent and a lot more accessible to any type of actor. So I think within the context of fraud and damage and to reputation and copyright, AI just makes doing these things a little bit easier. But if you do defame somebody or use their likeness to illegally advertise something without their consent, that still should fall in our current kind of legal frameworks.
So 2 questions here. What can be done to prevent these ones that are scams from happening? And,
Right.
and also, Jacob mentioned you can report them to the Better Business Bureau. What should you do if you come across one of these online and you know it's fake?
If you already know that it's fake, I would definitely flag the company or the person that's perhaps featured in that scam to let them know. And if you're kind of on the fence, I think we now need to move through digital environments and even our auditory environments with a sense that some of this information is not necessarily always true at this point in time. So think critically about the information you come across online, think critically about the sources. And then in terms of actually preventing scams more broadly or for each of us to not appear in a scam, that ship has kind of sailed. If you have any form of a digital footprint now, you have an area of your likeness that AI could be used by AI to immediately kind of recreate, which becomes much more challenging. So I think we need more structural changes to information and digital information in the AI age.
Absolutely. And that exact type of use of AI is what's taking center stage in these Hollywood strikes, which has been really interesting to see and hear how much they are concerned about this. Actors are demanding these safeguards against AI so that a star's likeness can't be used without their permission. And background actors, for example, couldn't just entirely be replaced. What do you think will happen with the future of AI in Hollywood and in media?
Yeah, so I think we're still so early in the AI evolution in Hollywood that it's hard to say what path we're going down. I do think if studios are looking at AI as a future automation tool and as a way to kind of just streamline processes, not only is that quite a dystopian future, but it's also rather creatively limiting. So I don't think I hope that's not the path that we think studios are walking down. In terms of where we might see AI in a way that actually works for the industry, how can we tell new types of stories, better stories using these tools? But I think, again, any sort of scanning of your digital likeness to be used in perpetuity, all those types of ideas, I think, are not a future that we should be wanting to walk towards. I do think AI, it's inevitable in the industry as it is in any other industry. And you're much better off learning how to co-create with it as a tool. But again, words like consent, not exploiting people's digital data without their permission, those need to be right in parallel with the technology evolving in this space.
No doubt it's a conversation happening behind closed doors this week between SAG-AFTRA and the studios. All right, Sinead Bobel, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And coming up, we're once again flipping the script.
After the break, the viral comedian who made a splash during the pandemic for her hilarious lip-syncing videos. But there is so much more to Sarah Cooper's career. She's been on Broadway, had her own Netflix special, and today she is telling her story with a brand new memoir. My conversation with Sarah is next. Stick around.
Welcome back. Well, if you're wondering whether you can get excited about the holidays yet, Mariah Carey has officially given us her blessing. So that means yes. She's announcing her Merry Christmas One and All tour. The singer confirmed on her social media. Yes, the actual defrosting has begun, a reference to the meme that she begins to defrost each year around October as her hit All I Want for Christmas Is You starts playing more and climbing the charts as it does every year. Carey will start spreading holiday cheer on November 15th in Highland, California, and the tour will end December 17th right here in New York. Tickets go on sale Friday. Joe, let's go.
Is it already, people are playing the song now?
I think that this is when it starts, yes. October, and then people are kind of like, definitely the day after Halloween is Christmas time. But yeah, this is the defrosting meme. It's running around.
Too early. All right. Thanks, Savannah.
Yeah.
Now to our series, Flipping the Script, featuring people on screen, on stage, and behind the scenes, shining a spotlight on diversity. And this is a good one. Enter Sarah Cooper. You may recognize the actor, writer, and comedian for her viral videos lip-syncing some of former President Donald Trump's more off-the-cuff moments. Since then, she starred in her own Netflix special called Everything's Fine. She shot a movie with Jerry Seinfeld, even made her professional stage debut in the off-Broadway drama The Wanderers. Now, she has a new book out today, her debut memoir called Foolish, Tales of Assimilation, Determination, and Humiliation. We are lucky to have Sarah Cooper with us here this morning. Good to see you.
It's good
How does
to
it
see
feel
you.
to say you have a book out?
It feels great, actually. It feels, I've been working on it for so long. It's nice that it's finally out.
Yeah. So let's go back to 2020.
Okay,
we're in the
let's do it.
pandemic. All we had was
where everybody wants to go. Back to
right.
2020.
That's what you want to talk about. All we had was Tiger King and you.
Yeah, Tiger King. I forgot about Tiger King, and now you've reminded me. I got to go watch that again.
And he's in jail, so we had you basically.
Okay, and now I'm going to head to jail.
And your videos just hit so big, so quickly. Everyone's retweeting you. Take us back today. How do you reflect on that moment and that time for you?
I was just kind of going through the motions of, oh my gosh, so many things are happening that I've wanted to happen for a decade, and now they're all happening within a month. So it was overwhelming. It was overwhelming.
And what did that mean for you, that it was overwhelming?
I met with, some of my biggest heroes. I remember meeting with Ben Stiller and being like, hey, Ben, do you want to be in my special? And, him going, Sure. And, you know, these things were just happening and I couldn't even explain it, but I also didn't have time to process it because it was happening so quickly. And I just said yes to everything. I wrote 2 books that got turned into pilots. I got the Netflix special. Everything just happened so fast.
It was surreal almost? I mean, just that every...
That's such a good word.
Yeah.
Surreal. I would say surreal, but it was also real.
Yeah, it was real.
And it was and it was surreal, yeah,
it was
for sure.
And real.
It was all of the things, you know.
How do you sum up your life since then?
Exhilarating, fascinating, percolating. Irrigating. Yeah, I would say irrigating is the biggest. Irrigating, you know, like water.
A sprinkler?
Sprinkler, just everywhere, all over, you know? Isn't that fun? Slip and slide, you know?
You were right before this moment. I mean, you had worked for Yahoo and Google. You'd done things very different from comedy.
Yeah.
And did you think this was never going to happen? Like, I'm just going to have to, like, stay in this
sound like my dad. It's never going to happen.
No, I'm asking.
Yeah,
I'm not saying.
I know. I actually didn't. In 2019, I was thinking about going back to Google because I was like, you know, the straight white dudes I'm meeting in stand-up comedy aren't doing it for me. So I need to go back to the straight white dudes in tech and married a straight white dude. I love straight white dudes. I'm surrounded by them. This was it. You would never think that Donald Trump being elected and then TikTok and then lip sync. I started lip syncing in church. I was in church. I was a little girl and I was singing. I was belting out this hymn and I thought I sounded so good. And then my mom turned to me and she said, "Just mouth the words. Just mouth them. Don't actually sing." And that's when I started lip syncing. So I went from God to Trump. God to Trump. Yeah.
Let's talk about the book, all right? It's out today. It's called Foolish. I love on the cover, there's a quote from Jerry Seinfeld that simply says, "Delightful, complicated,"
which sounds like a rough quote, but it's from Seinfeld, so it's
He's your hero, right?
He's my hero, yes, he is.
Why did you want to write this memoir? You've written books before, but why tell your story, especially in the wake of 2020?
Money was a big one. I Want to Meet Men is another one. Neither of those things have happened yet, but I'm still holding out for them.
You say in the book that at that moment when everything happened, you weren't really ready for it at the time. What are the things that you hope people can take away from reading your story and hearing about it? Because you write a book, you hope people learn something from that lesson, right?
Well, I have to say the biggest thing is to laugh. And I just want people to laugh. And I know you've read it.
And you do. And I've laughed.
Cover to cover. You read the whole thing, right?
To be fair, I've read parts of it.
On page 86, what did I say? I want people to laugh.
It is
mainly.
Funny.
Thank you.
It's your humor.
You look so scared.
Through.
You're like, it's funny. I swear to God.
It is, yeah.
The other thing is basically like, I talk about my daddy issues, and a lot of that has to do with, you know, coming to this country, wanting to be as perfect as possible, and wanting to fit in, and working in tech, and then humiliation is all about realizing that I am my own daddy.
Okay, and is that okay?
It's going well. It's going well. It's like I said, it's a lot of times you kind of are looking to an external power to give yourself power. And this is about finding the power in the power that is you, which is the power of you, which is powerful, right? Did I say powerful enough?
I think you said the word power.
I think I did.
We've got like 20 seconds here. You're never going to do Trump again, right?
Never.
Even though we have a year where he could be running
I can lip sync
for office
anyone,
again?
actually. They can put the camera on me and I could lip sync you right now.
What is your top goal? What's next?
I want to lip sync you.
Here we go.
That's me.
All right. Well, we have a prompter here, so maybe you can help with that. So I'm going to say, Sarah Cooper, thanks so much. The book is called Foolish and is out today. And that is going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank you
Good to
so
see you.
much.
Pleasure to have you on. Savannah?
The news continues now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.